works. So hopefully you got to do a mould, and this just will show. I've left the Christmas tree out so that I've got one to show you to pull out to trim, because I've also painted the other two I pulled out. So I've already pulled out the bauble and the angel. And then all you do with these is, you know where we said when you put the paper in, leave it sort of sticking up at the edges. I know it looks tatty, but it does make it easier to pull. So if I do it like that, you can actually pull it around the edges. And you just do it carefully. Oh yeah. Oop. There we are. Ta-da! And what you get is this side that's been closest to the plaster is probably, in this one, still a little bit damp. I've left it in the veil. But it's there we are. I've got a Christmas tree. And then we've got all this really tatty edging. And all I do with that is cut it off. And you can actually see where it is, because there's like an edge at the edge of the mould where you folded this over. And just cut it off. Level it off. The idea is that if you want to, you can make a second one and then stick them together. But I mean, we're essentially making plaques, really. And all we're doing now is just tidying up the edge where it's overhung from the. You can just pull it off. Swan's showing kids this, and said, and when you get it out, you've got to trim the edges. Or show us that star. Let's have a look. I've just seen a star jump up onto the screen. No, I'm not getting it. And I was once doing this for kids and said, you have to cut the edges. And they said, oh, but sir, that's really scruffy. And I said, yeah, but I once went to see them casting bells. They had to get big machines out to take the edges off when they cast those big bronze bells. So it is a standard thing with this sort of moulding or casting, that the edges you have to tidy up because it does leach a bit. And if you didn't do this edging, it becomes a harder thing to get out of the mould, especially if you've got a complicated shape. If bits of the paper come off when you do it, don't panic, because we've got 4 layers, so it will be quite tough even if bits of paper flake off. It's not bad. I'll bring it closer then you can see what I've done. There you go. So that's the side that was in the press mould. That's it just fresh out. And I've got bits here that I'm not happy with. I'm just going to pull them off, get rid of them. And I've got, I think it looks like a Christmas tree, sort of, near enough. It's about that thick. Mine, the way I've made it is that it's thinner at the top and fatter at the bottom. So it's like sort of sloped. I don't know that you can see that, but just makes it a bit more of an interesting shape. Now, if I wanted to, I could make another one and then stick them both together. But actually, as a standalone plaque, it sort of worked, doesn't it? So, all we need to do then is to start getting ready for the painting process. And if you remember, I sent you a little pot. Oh, look at that one. Shows your bauble. Look at that. Love it. So, I sent you a little pot of this awful magnolia paint, I suppose is about it. It's just a vinyl matte emulsion. I use it all the time, and I just buy it in the great big tubs because it's cheap, and whatever's on special gets bought. So sometimes it's magnolia and sometimes it's white. And it doesn't really matter. What we're trying to do is just, if you like, prime the surface. And the vinyl matte, because it's got a plastic in it, has. It sort of helps waterproof the paper as well for when you're going to do the next processes. So again, you can just use that plastic tile, floor tile I gave you as your base, so it doesn't matter that you go around over the edges and onto the work surface, because it's just an old tile. And paint it on. Don't be mean with this paint. I've given you plenty of it for this job. Give it a good covering. You might need to do two, depending on how it soaks in. This is probably how I get paint everywhere, because it's all over me already. There we go. There's no need to paint the inside unless you want to. What I normally do with these things is just paint it a neutral colour. Sometimes it's just black, or it just ends up white once I've finished. Or like I've done on the dragon head I showed you before, I've just left it so people can see it. Doesn't really matter. There we go. And just put that somewhere to dry. I've got a handy radiator here, which I'll just ruin. It's in Leon's office, so it doesn't really matter. He won't know. Right, so that's drying. While they're sort of drying off, I promised you, I don't know why I said I'd do this. Do you remember I said we'll make one on just clay as opposed to a plaster mould? So I modelled a clay bauble. I don't know if you can see that. I'll bring it a bit closer. So that was the clay on the inside, and we made just a clay sort of positive, and I've covered it in some layers of paper like we've done on the mould. In other words, it's in reverse. This is sort of dried, and I'm now going to get it off, and I sort of do it live. I don't show anybody this because it doesn't always work. And
we need a drum roll.
Sorry? It doesn't always work.
We need a drum roll.
You need a drum roll. What you have to do is if you can pull it slightly away from the mould, because what happens over time, this has been sitting here for a week, the clay slightly shrinks because it dries out slightly. It's still usable, it's still got a sort of some softness to it, but it has shrunk in size slightly. So you can pull the paper away from the edge, but only a little bit. What you can't do is pull it away from this design. So what you do with your trusty knife, I was going to show you this. Right, so what you do is cut into the paper, into the clay underneath, and just cut down. I've made a cut. There's a cut, and you see, I've just sliced it down there. And what that does is that makes it easier. Can you see how it's suddenly coming away? So I'm going to actually make a cut on the other side where it's not help. It's getting there. All right, I'll do another cut. I usually do at least 2, maybe 3. So I'm just going to cut into the clay. You can feel it crunching as you do it. I'll do it on the other one as well. Okay, I've now cut it 3 times. And it's sort of, it's like petals of a flower now. But you can see, I don't know if you can, that it's coming away. Yeah. And then what you can do is slowly lift it off. Don't forget we put Vaseline petroleum jelly as a release agent on the clay. Can you see it's coming away? Ta-da! Now we can use that again. I can now cover that straight away with a bit more Vaseline and put more paper on and do another one. But what I can do with this is that I've now got a bauble with 3 cuts in it, but I can just put some paper the same way as before with the PVA over those lines, and it works. And I've got a bauble. Ha-ha!
Very good. My heart was in my mouth, but we got there.
So just to show you that it does work this other way. And the only time I do it is if I'm just doing a head, one head, that has to be of a certain shape that I can't make any other way. So again, I just trim the edges where it's over. And there you go, half a bauble. Ta-da! I'm glad that worked. There you go. It also helped that the design I picked had no great overhangs. There's no big hooked nose or something on it. Anyway, that one works.
Jordan, have you ever used tin foil with these moulds? Because Andy just wondered whether you could combine what we learned with Mel in the first week.
Yes, you could. I don't see any reason why not. What I would do is probably put a couple of layers of paper on first, and then let it almost dry, and then put some glue on, and then mould the tin foil like Mel showed you. Let it all set, and then lift it off the same way. In the press moulds, much easier. You can push the foil in straight away. And did Mel do, I've only watched her once, did she do 2 or 3 layers of foil or just one?
I think it was it just one, Kelly? Yeah, just one.
Okay, so what I would do is I would put the 1 layer of foil in and just push it in and smooth it so you've got the outer, and then I would put a couple of layers of paper on the inside. Let it all dry, and then the whole thing lifts out, and then what you've got is a backing to your tin foil, so it holds the shape. I do a thing with mask making for kids, where we can do an instant mould of the face, and we don't have to put plaster on the face or any of those horrible things. And they like it because it's really stupid. And basically, you get a couple of layers of tin foil in a square, big enough to cover your face, and then you put on top of it folded newspaper that you paint with PVA. Maybe 4 layers of newspaper. So you've got like a sandwich, foil base, and then 4 layers of newspaper, all nice and soggy from the PVA. And then you put it on your face like this, and push it in round your nose, around your eyes, and the foil holds the paper in the shape. And then you take it off and let it dry, and then you peel the foil off, and the paper stays the shape of what it's set into. And you end up with a paper model of your face or your head. So it's easy to make. I was doing Venetian masks, which are like sort of cat shapes and beautiful eyelashes and things, but you make it fit your face. So that works. That's another use of tin foil, which I love. Right, so with Leon's handy radiator, I've now dried my angel, and that's my bauble that was done earlier. So I've now got 2 to paint, and what I thought was, if I did some of the painting that I generally sort of do, one of which is with a sponge. Now I've just gone back, I'm in the Vale, I can wander back into the art room at the back and just lift out stuff I found. But this is, when I'm doing my own stuff in my own studio, I buy those car wash sponges that are 50p from B&Q or anywhere like that, and you just chop up into little pieces. And one sponge will do 30, one car wash sponge, which is about that big, will do 30 of these, which is perfect, does a class. And now I say things like, I'll supply the sponges, don't worry. And it's cost me 50p, but they don't know that. Right, so I'm going to do this angel, I think. I've got a different idea for that. And I'm just going to sponge it, with some, what I've got here is some acrylic paint. It's a translucent acrylic paint. I use it a lot on lanterns and things. And this is really dirt cheap stuff to buy. You can buy this in most places. This is from an online shop called Baker Ross that do lots of educational stuff. And it's the cheapest acrylic paint I've found. And you can just use it like you would watercolour paint. So I'm not going to fiddle about too much because we haven't got a huge amount of time. So in a palette, and you don't have to have a palette, you could use your bowl. You remember the bowls I sent? You could use the bowl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a variety of colours for this angel, and the colour scheme I think is going to be sort of yellow and gold. Okay, so I've got these colours here. So I'm going to do yellow, but then I'm also going to put a bit of orange into the yellow, so I've got some extra colour. What I tend to do is when I'm doing this sort of effect, which is either colour moulding or blending or layering of colours, the idea is that I'll put a base colour on first, which will be really pale, so it'll be yellow in this case, and then I'll sponge that on, and that will cover it all. But because it's a sponge, it won't cover it all completely. There'll be bits of this primer showing through. There'll also be bits of areas where there's more paint, so it's thicker and therefore showing darker. So there'll be, if you like, 2 or 3 different shades of yellow just by sticking the sponge on. I then will add a tiny bit of orange paled down with yellow on top of that, and bits of the yellow will still show through on top of with the orange, and then I'll put gold on top of that, and what we'll end up with is a sort of merging of the colours, but gaps where the different colours shine through. And what it does is it gives it some depth, and it gives it much more of a 3-dimensional effect. And if I'm doing heads, people's faces, giants or something like that, that's something I tend to do a lot of. Right, so I'm going to put a bit of yellow into this bowl, because I'm just going to do yellow. I'm not fiddling about, I'm not mixing it with anything else. And I'm putting it on my sponge, all of it, and it looks quite dry. If you put it on your hand, it only just comes onto your hand, so it's quite a dry mix. And then, this is like the 80s rag rolling with Laura Ashley. This is how it is. Don't go block, 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 block. You can tell I do it in school, can't you? You have to roll it. So the action is that, because what you want is some parts thicker and some parts lighter. And do it quite quickly, because you don't want to completely cover it. You just want a hint that, yeah, it's yellow. Okay, I'll bring it up so hopefully you can see. That's it, as much as I've done. And on there, I think you can see on the screen, you can still see some of the white colour coming through. Yeah? Okay. I'm now in the same thing. I'm going to stick a bit of orange, a bit more yellow, and a tiny bit of orange, mix it in. I tend to use 3 shades. So if I'm doing yellows, I'll do 3 versions of yellow. I don't know why 3, it just seems to work out better. And I use the same sponge. So I've now got bits of yellow and bits of orange on the same sponge, which also helps the effect. And I'll just, at random really, maybe where I see, I don't know, I haven't thought about it too hard, but maybe where I see a bit of white, I might put some of this orange mixture. I don't know. And don't forget the edges, because we'll be able to see them. You're worried about your table, use your tile. No. So now what I've got on there is a little bit of orange mixed in with the yellow. I'm now going to do the same, more yellow and a lot more orange this time. So I've got a much stronger colour. It's a bit too strong, put a bit more yellow in. That's better. The other thing is, if you don't like the colour, change it. There we go. I put too much orange in, I got excited. I think that'll do. Using the same sponge, take some yellow orange onto it. This is now a darker orange. This is where you need to think of it. So I'm just going to sort of oranges around the edges. Like that. There we go. I'll show you that one. Okay, you see that? So I've got 3 colours on there, and I've still got yellow coming through. I've even got bits of white, I think, showing through, and I've got the darker orange. I'm now going to do the gold. And at the moment, I'm not waiting for it to dry. Don't wait for it to dry, because you want these colours to mix in. So I've got, this is, again, dirt cheap gold paint. It's an acrylic-based paint, but from Baker Ross, it's really cheap. And we're carnival here, so we use a lot of gold. I forgot to bring mine, so I knew there'd be gold back there in the storeroom. Right, so I'm going to Put the gold in there, I think. Don't bother cleaning your bowl. Just put it in. Stir it in. I've now got some orange and gold all mixed up. A bit more. There we go. And then put that on the top. Just do the edges. What you can do with the sponge is you can stick it into those areas where you can't really get the paint in easily and cover it up. That's it. Okay, that's it. So I'm going to leave that now to dry. And what I've actually got there is just a build-up of colour. So when it dries, the gold will just sort of reflect a little bit. And we've got a sort of a golden angel. And now I might put a bit of detail on it later. So I'm going to put that on Leon's radiator, cool that off. I'll put that in there, get rid of that. I'm so organised, this doesn't normally happen like this. This is a quick run to the sink to empty the bowl normally. Alright, so I've got sorted water. Okay, so I've now got a bauble, that little bauble that came out. And on those sheets I sent out, there's some examples of what we might paint as a bauble. So this is more complicated. And I'm not necessarily going to use sponge all the time. But I am going to put a base colour on first. And you might see I've actually made a green myself, which is a bit, mainly yellow and a tiniest bit of blue. But then you knew that. And I'm going to, with my little, I'll use another sponge. Normally I'd go and wash that because I don't like to waste them, but hell, we're in the Vale, it doesn't matter. Right, I've made a much smaller sponge this time because it's a smaller job. And I just want to basically give this a colour wash in green, which is the base of the bauble I'm going to do. Like when I was in school, it's the same thing. Put it on and scrape it off. Don't leave loads of paint on this sponge, you don't need it. Because we're after building up colour. We just want a pale covering that allows some of the primer paint to come through. Because we're trying to make it look like it isn't a piece of paper. But it might have an added dimension, and what we're trying to do is confuse you with the light. So around the edges, no problem. I'll make that darker when I actually finish it off. And I'm still rolling it. I'm not blah blah. I'm blah blah. All right. So what I've given it is just a very gentle lime green wash. It looks like a sweep, doesn't it? Okay. I'll bring it back again. I'll be tired when this is finished. Okay. So although it's green, it's also white because I've only put a very thin layer on. And then I'm going to cheat because I can. I've got another medium I like to use. It's this. And it is a medium. This is called iridescent medium. Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? This is like your own glitter pot, but it's not glitter. And basically it's a medium that shines. It's iridescent. So it reflects the light. I've used it a lot, as you can tell. Don't want to squirt it all over the computer. Maybe I'll do it this way. There we go. No, I'll do it properly. And what you do with this is you mix it into your paint. So I'm going to mix it in with the green, about the same amount of iridescent medium as green. So this is really expensive. This costs like 12 quid, this little pot. So if you're mixing it with paint, don't use too much, because you don't need a lot.
Could you use conventional glitter, Gordon?
You could, but I'm a green artist.
Yeah.
And it's sort of frowned on these
Yeah.
days that we don't use it because it's, you know, it's damaging and all the rest of it, which is a real shame because
Yeah.
we love it. What this does is it gives it an iridescence, so it reflects the light. That's all we're trying to do. There are other ways of doing it. So I'm going to put a bit of green on this lid. And I'm going to put about the same amount of this, if I can get it out of the pot. There we go. And when it comes out, it's sort of, you can tell it's got a sheen to it. It's got a luster. It's great fun. And it doesn't affect the colour. So you can mix it with any colour of paint you want. Really can. There we go. See, it hasn't changed the colour, but I can see it in the studio lights here. There's a slight sheen to it. Right. So I'm now going to paint a design on here. Freehand, I'm not bothering to draw it. I can't be bothered. I haven't got time to worry about that, but I should probably do. I have wallets of these brushes, loads of them, and I wear them out. I never used to, but since I've sort of been doing this for a living, which is about 12 years now, I wear these out. I've never worn brushes out as much. I never realised before that they do wear out, but they do. Right, so I'm just going to paint this onto the green, so it won't be an obvious pattern, and it won't be an obvious colour. But what will happen is when it dries, it will just have a sheen on it. So I'm just painting it around the edges over the existing colour. And it will just, if you like, I'm making the edges shiny so that it helps to make it look even more round, as it makes it an obvious shape. So if you like, I'm just doing it on the edge, its profile really. And it's a bit more on this side here. I'm doing it very quickly. You can take as long as you like, really, can't you? Okay. Now, I'm not going to waste that. I'm just going to make it a darker colour. So everything will be green, but because I'm using the same base, I'm just changing the colour. So I'm going to put a bit of blue in and see what happens. Make it dark and green. Now, by a little bit, I only need a bit, don't need much. And what it means you get is a continuation of the green colour, but it gradually changes. So I've now got the lime green, a bit more blue in it, so it's obviously going to be a darker green, and it's still got the iridescent medium in it as well. That's nice. And this, if you like, will become a highlight colour for the bauble decoration. And I'm going to get a better brush because that's not very good. It's a better brush. There's one. All right. And all I'm going to do with this is, without marking it out, I'm just going to paint a line across here. So one here. There we go. I'm going to paint another one slightly higher up here. Dries really quick, this stuff. It looked like it's straight, like I've really thought about it. Yeah. Okay. And then I've got triangles on this one, so I'm going to paint triangles like a border. And all we're trying to hint at is that it's got decoration on it, that's all. On my knees now. Okay. And I'm just going to paint a smaller one up there as I can. What I'm trying to do on this one is to try and get a pattern but make it slightly indistinct so it's not obvious. It's a hint that it's there, because if you look at a lot of glass baubles, the base of them is obviously glass and all the colours sort of merge into each other. So what I'm trying to do is reflect that. So I'll make that like this. Hold it on. Okay. There we go. So all you can see on that now is I've got, can you see there's a sort of a pattern? Maybe you can. When that's dry, I'll pick it out with some gold paint. So I'll leave that to dry. And hopefully, yes, I can get back onto the angel. So the angel, thanks to Leon's handy radiator, is now dry. And all I'm going to do now is build up more gold with a paintbrush. I can find a oh, yeah. This one will do. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just using a very fine brush and the straightforward acrylic gold. And I'm just going to paint the gold on, hopefully. You have to put it on quite thick because this is acrylic, it doesn't smooth out like watercolours do. Put it on quite thick. I haven't got my glasses, so I'm having to do the best I can. There we are. Just putting a bit of detail on the wings. That's my phone, I'm sorry. My swans went out last night. The floating swans I've been building while I've been doing this went out yesterday as well. So there's lots of comments about people who thought they might have sunk, but they did not sink.
Oh, just share the picture on Facebook. I just found it actually.
Ah, there you are. Yeah, they just sent them off. Pushed them off from the side in a pole and held them on with a piece of string and let them go. Works okay.
I don't know if anyone can see the screen, but there they are, the swans in their floating glory.
Oh yeah? Look quite good, don't they? And what I did like was I got the reflection in the water, which is what I really wanted.
They look great.
Yeah, and I think they're okay. And I think when John's finished, there was a professional videographer there, John Gray, who does a lot of our stuff for Global Grooves and such, was also there, and he spent 3 hours filming them. God knows what he filmed, but he did it for 3 hours because he's building together a full video of the theme, which is it's 12 days of Christmas. So those are the 7 swans are swimming. But he's also done a film in terms of how we launched them, and I think my nervousness about will we float will have come through as well.
After today's session, we're exactly halfway through the course. 6 weeks.
What's next? Is it more lanterns with Melanie, I think?
Yeah, that's right. And actually, while on the subject, she sent me some notes to let you all know. Let me just grab my notes. So I'll be dropping round some bags of withy sticks, the long sort of sticks that you make lanterns from. And she's asked that we soak them in the bath or the shower just the day before to make them a bit more pliable and less likely to snap. But not the bamboo pole that she supplied. Hopefully that will all be clear when you get the packs. And she said for the first week, you'll only need the sticks and the masking tape and a clear table. But I'll put this all in an email anyway, so you've got it.
Right, so I've painted gold all over my little angel. It's difficult to show on the screen because I don't think it shows up because they're quite subtle changes, but it has some colours on it. So that when that's hung up, it'll be an angel. What I'll probably do is I've got some black paint when it's dried. I might just put a little bit of shading onto it just to make it happen. Right, you'll be pleased to know that the Christmas tree is dry. Here we go. So this time I'm not going to use these fancy acrylic paints. Get rid of those. I'm going to use a paint box. Here we go. Basic paint box. Basic watercolour. I don't use this box very often, it's just to show colours really, but because I have great blocks of colour like this normally. The kids think it's really funny because the blocks come in like trays like this, and I have all those colours but in giant blocks. And so I have maybe 8 or 9 of these trays full of blocks of watercolour paint, and it's how I paint. Acrylics I'll use for this sort of job, but when I'm painting I don't normally. Right, so I'm just going to use this fairly chunky brush. I'm going to follow the picture of the tree. So I'm going to, I was going to say I'm going to use a pen, but I don't know if I've got one. I haven't, never mind. Oh, it's a felt pen, that'll do. I'll pinch this felt pen over here. Oh, what's that do? Does this work? Wait, here we go. Leon's left a biro. So I'm just going to really just put baubles on this tree, and I'm going to draw them on in biro so I know where to paint. They're all over the place on the original drawing. I'm just going to try and copy it the same. yellow, put one in the middle there. And there's one at the top. What you can do is go over the edge like that. There we go. Right, so on my tree I've put a few baubles as per the picture. And I'm going to use watercolour straight onto the paint, but I'm going to use a variety of colours. So I've got, in my paint box, I've got 3 greens. So I'm going to use this one, which is leaf green, funnily enough, that's what it's called. And what I tend to do is check it out first, that's all right. So this tree is more like an illustration than anything else. And because you've primed it, essentially the paint sits on the top, it doesn't soak into the paper. That's the reason for priming it, really. So you can get the colour. But I quite like this effect you get. I like watercolour. Quite like the effect you get with watercolour, where it's darker and lighter naturally, just where the paint goes. And I quite like that because I will do an extra colour, a different colour on the top. And here's the thing: when you're doing watercolour, if you're doing this colour layering, blending or merging, which is what it's really called, you start with the pale colour first. The reason for that is if you put a dark colour, especially on watercolours, you can't paint a light colour onto a dark colour, it doesn't work. It does if you're using things like acrylic that just sit there, so you can put black on and then paint white on the top without any problem. If you were to put black paint on and then try and put white watercolour on top of it, it doesn't work as well. So what I'm doing here is in my head I've got probably 3 greens. That's how I tend to work. I don't know why 3. Maybe I just like odd numbers. So the first green is a pale green, and I'm spreading it out. I'm not putting it on too thickly. Apart from I'm not painting the bauble marks, I'm not covering the whole thing either, so that you get this effect of the white coming through. The paint is. Yeah. Right. And while it's still wet, it's not dried off completely, I'm going to put the second colour on, which is on my paint box, is the next one up, which I think is called moss green. I'm not sure, looks like it might be. Okay, that's a slightly different tone again, and I'm not going to be too picky about where it goes. I'm just going to blob it on, mostly at the edges, because in my head that's probably on a tree where you get the darker bits. I wanted to stick it into that lovely iridescence. So don't go wild with it, just wherever you like. So underneath, yes, for sure, because it's a darker shade. Some people might just want, I want it solid green, I don't want anything else on it. Okay, so that's still wet. In this lovely paint box, I've got another green. Fantastic. That's why I've picked it. So I've now got 3 greens. I've got a leaf green, moss green, and almost a bottle green. It's not quite, but it's quite a nice shade. And this is going to be even more sporadic. It's just going to be in places where I think it should be shaded. Okay. And then I'm just going to paint a very pale brown trunk. I'm going to use yellow ochre because it's a nice colour. Just at the bottom here where there's the tree trunk. And I'm not worrying about it too much. While that's still wet, a little bit of the dark brown at this end. This is a real dark brown, and I'll just touch it in places. Okay, it's very quick. I'll bring it so you can see. So what I've got is 3 greens. Okay, so it's not a flat green. I know it doesn't look much, it's just a little bauble, but it gives you a bit of extra. I'm now going to paint these baubles in. I don't like the blue, so I'm going to do red, because I like red. Now, a way of making them look round, apart from they are round, is to leave a little bit of light shining on them. Like when you paint an eyeball, there's always a little bit of that light glinting on the eyeball. And there's a sort of a conceit. It's a traditional way of doing things. But when you see a cartoon of an eyeball, there's always a little tiny little bit of white, basically. So all you do with that, what red? That's a nice red. What's that like? Oh, that's a nice red. We'll use that one. So I'm just going to leave a tiny little bit of white in places, and then fill in the rest of the bauble. Without glasses, crikey. You'll be able to say today that, yeah, I spent an hour and a half watching paint dry. Sorry. So again, and I've got them all in the same place, so that the little white spot, if you like, that is light shining on my baubles is all roughly in the same place. Because I'm pretending the light's coming from over there somewhere. If you're going to do this, you have to imagine where the light's coming from and stick to it. And ideally, in an ideal world, you paint these baubles on after the green has dried. You'll see why in a minute. Again, a little chink of light. Chink of light. Hopefully you'll take a lot longer to paint it than me. I'm doing it really quickly. Put a nice piece of loud music on and paint, like I normally do. I won't carry on doing them all because this is terribly boring otherwise. But if you look, and it will again be really difficult to see on here, I'm absolutely certain, there's a tiny bit of speck of white on the bauble. And actually, when you look at it, when I'm looking at it, it does make them look round, with a bit of light shining on them. When that's dry, that will look a lot better.
That looks great.
Thank you. It does, it works. It's just a tiny little triangle of white, but always put them, all of them, in the same place. So if you've got a whole load of baubles, don't have the little white bits all over the place, otherwise it doesn't work. If you look at Sophie's glasses now, you can see where the light from the screen is shining, and it's not in the same place on both eyes. So if I was painting that, it'd be a bit here and a bit here. But then if I was painting somebody else's glasses next to it, it would be the same. I wouldn't have it the other way around, because then they're opposing each other, and it's no good.
And it would
Right,
look like
so
box.
how are we doing for time? Because I don't want to overrun.
It's 11 o'clock.
Right, okay. I'll just finish this one bauble off. So this is the bauble, which is predominantly green. And I'm now just going to put a bit of gold on it, because I can. Because I want to. What I haven't gone on about is afterwards, once these are dry. So if you get hold of acrylic paint, and you don't have to have big bottles, these are small bottles, but you don't have to, you can buy kits, especially Black Friday online stuff. There'll be little kits of little bits of acrylic. It's shiny when it's finished, and I've made it shinier because I've used iridescent medium, which I love saying that. You don't need to varnish it, okay? But what I tend to do with all the things I paint, baubles, but things like heads, hands, big things, those swans you just looked at, they get varnished, they get lacquered. And I use, this is really expensive stuff. This is outdoor varnish. It's crystal clear, and it's an acrylic-based varnish, so it doesn't stink. There's no fumes off it, so I can use it wherever I like. That tin, that little tin, costs 22 quid. It's crazy, but it really works from an art point of view. The other stuff I tend to use is like a spray sealant, it's called, and that you just spray it. That really stinks, but it also seals it. And the reason you put it on, even with things like this that aren't going to the outside, so they don't need protection from the weather, is that if you use watercolour paints, they tend to dry flat, matte, chalky, flat. You put some varnish on or some sealant, it lifts them up, and it makes them look more vibrant as if they're covered in water. So just something to think about. I'll be doing that to any baubles if I carry on making them. I suppose I will. I'll varnish them all so they're shiny. That's all. End of rant. So I'm going back to my acrylic palette, and I've got this nice gold stuff here. If you think about it, if you're going to use some varnish, you don't necessarily need to use gold paint. You could use orange, and then once you varnish it, it has that effect. So what I'm going to do now is, in my little triangles here, is paint gold inside the triangles. Okay. What I'm trying to do is make it look like my granny's baubles, the ones I grew up with, which were sort of glass and very garish, but great. It's weird, I've actually found myself hunting them down and buying them. I've got them on my tree now. So I'm just detailing the little triangles I've made with the greens, and I'm not filling them in, I'm just lining them with a gold line, really. I suppose somewhere somebody's making baubles and painting them. I suppose that's how it works. So this is the same effect, really. I think the thing to do with these is once you get started is stick to your colours. So keep the colours sort of simple. So, you know, if you're going to do a green bauble, do a green bauble. Don't put pink in it, but do 2 greens, 3 greens. and then a highlight. In this case, it's gold, but you know, it's like Sophie said, it could be glitter, couldn't it? If you think about it. There's supposed to be a biodegradable glitter. I've looked at it, but it's not as good as the other stuff. And it's obviously very expensive. And what we've tried to do, I have anyway, is move away from it altogether. Which is no bad thing. I have nightmare stories of children in school with glitter. There was one where I had, I'll tell you one story. I had a giant pot of black glitter, which is probably a tub that big, but like that, okay? And it had gaffer tape round the top, seal it on, and it was in one of my store boxes in the classroom, at the back of the classroom, away from the children. And I'm talking away at the front, and the teacher's standing to my right, and she's helping and telling Johnny to sit down and all the rest of it. They're only little kids. And then we see a little boy who, for some reason, has gone into the box and he's found the tub of glitter. And you know when things sort of go slightly to slow motion, and he's doing this to the pot, trying to pull the top off with the tape. And I went one way, and the teacher went the other way, which was, no, like really slow. And we got halfway to him, and he pulled the lid off, and he did that, and up went the pot, and the entire pot, half a kilo of glitter, black, went up into the air like an atomic bomb, went and covered the entire classroom and all the kids and all the tables and everything we were painted with black glitter. And we just stood there, shocked, like this. And the first thing the teacher said, oh no, I'm going to have to tell the janitor to clean it. I think she was called Janet, the janitor. Oh no. And her biggest worry was that she's going to have to tell the school cleaner that we had a glitter issue. So I now go into schools, and often the cleaners or the janitors, if they can get hold of you, they'll say things like, are you doing masks? You're not using glitter, are you? And then if you go no, they go, thank God, because they hate it. Sorry, but this kid, I can't believe it. It's black.
Ever work with children, animals and glitter?
Yeah. Don't work with any of them if you can help it. I don't really like them. I'm a grandfather and I don't particularly like working with them either. But I have to, I will be babysitting. I will actually, in the new term after Christmas, my little grandson who's 3, Edwin, poor thing, starts nursery school. And on Monday mornings, I have to take him. Granddaddy's going to take him to school on Monday mornings. And my daughter, who remembers me taking her to school, is saying things like, you won't forget, will you, Dad? You won't forget to go, will you? Because there were a few times when I've always worked from home, where I would forget to take her to school. Because you get sidetracked. I do anyway. So I've had to promise that no, I won't forget to take Edwin to school. Right, so I'm just going to put some blobs on there because I think I can. With the I like these baubles. You can actually just carry on decorating to your heart's content, really. Finish it. I will finish, I promise. There we are. All right, so I've done a green bauble. You have to imagine it will look a lot better in real life. But you can see the sort of the gold a bit, can't you?
That looks great.
Iridescence shines. So that in a tree will actually work. And if you made a whole load of these, you could just string them together. And all I would do would be to put a needle through it with some string. And if you put it with a needle through the paper, don't stick it through your fingers, the string, it will stay where you put it, if you see what I mean, because the needle will only be as big as the string that you put in through. if you were to use something like wool, that'd be even better because that's hairy. When you push that through, this will stay on the string wherever you stick it, and then just stick a whole of them together, or hang them on a tree or somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, that looks quite good, doesn't it? I'm quite pleased with that.
Did you say that you use wire as well, Gordon?
Yeah, well, I use a lot of wire in the things I build, so I say things like use wire. I've got 25 kilo reel downstairs of my wire because I buy it. It's the stuff that they make fences out of. It's 2 mil, so it's quite bendy. So I also said, yeah, blase, just use a bit of wire. But who has wire? I mean, I don't know, which is why I've said string, wool, wire if you've got it. It doesn't really matter. I use wire because I can then shape it and I can hang other things off it. So I will probably do a whole thing with wire and have baubles, but then some paper leaves and things hanging off it as well and make it look pretty because I'm supposed to do stuff like that. So the Christmas tree, if you see, this is watercolour. This is what happens to it. See how dull that is now? I don't know if you can see. It's not shining at all. If I varnish that, it will become shiny and it will then look much more vibrant. But the most important thing is the thing that makes it for me is, apart from we've got 3 shades of green blobbed on completely at random, which gives it a bit of a lift, is the baubles. Because I've used a black biro, I've got a slightly darker edge around the bauble because it's coming through the paint, which is good. It gives me a hint of a shadow, and a little bit of white, and it gives it a hint of it's round and it's reflecting the light. That, to me, is the best bit of the whole thing. The tree is very nice, but the baubles are really good. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. I think that's it, really.
Brilliant.
Any questions, or because this is your last time you'll see me? I'm gone now.
Yeah.
Finishing.
Kelly and Sophie, let's see yours if you're able to hold them up to the camera.
We got Nick. Oh yeah, look.
Oh, brilliant!
Have a look.
Oh, that's lovely.
I can't see that. How do I make it big on here? Have a look. Hold on. Full screen. Oh, look at that.
Brilliant. Oh, that's lovely.
I like it. They look good, guys.
It's still a bit wet.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they'll dry out really fast, though, won't they? Because it's paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can just make as many as you want. Oh, look at that. That's worked. Give it to the front. Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Just because my little girl loves arts.
Yeah. But the beauty of it is you can now make half a dozen the same, can't you? Which is what is the thing about it. That, oh, yeah, look.
Oh.
It worked. I love it when it works.
It's a bit crooked, but that's my crafting, isn't it? My design to start with.
No, I like it. Good.
Yeah. Happy. Love it.
Great.
Excited to do some more.
Is that a snowman there, Soaping, that you've got?
Just do more.
Yeah, I do so many things.
Hey, look.
That. That's
brilliant.
Snowman.
That is
And
lovely.
this is Angel. Angel.
Look at that.
Oh,
Brilliant.
that's really elaborate. That's lovely.
And I also do my palm.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Oh, that's brilliant.
All right, I think my work here is done.
Yeah, I think so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and the Christmas tree also.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, you have been busy. Fantastic.
Brilliant.
I make many things.
Oh, very festive. That's
Excellent.
great.
And you can dry more quickly by using the hair dryer.
There you go.
Oh, nice. Good tip.
Use the hair dryer to dry it.
Oh, yeah.
It will quick.
Brilliant. Oh, well done, everyone.
Well
That's
done.
great. Thanks, Gordon. That's brilliant.
Okay. No, it's good, isn't it? It's just a fun thing to do. I mean, I don't normally do these small things, but I just like quite playing with it because I can now make a whole load of them at my leisure, really. So I've got a giant shop window to do, and then I finish sort of making big things around about December the 2nd or 3rd. And then I've got a lot of writing. I was saying to Sarah before you came on that I've got to do a lot of writing for an Arts Council bid and stuff like that. But it's so boring. So I'll have this on the side and I'll do a bit of this and I'll do a bit of writing and I'll do a bit of this. And it sort of breaks up the day. But a mould, you don't have to think, do you? You just sort of stuff it full of paper. And what it helps me do is I can be thinking about what I've got to write while I'm doing something else completely different with my hands, and it's just diverts. I have to be making stuff. I'm one of those, I can't not make stuff. I have an allotment. I'll be on that shortly. I've got to do some raised beds because they've chopped a tree down. So I'm going to be building some garden beds shortly. Probably on Christmas Day, knowing my luck. That's how it goes.
I've been on the list for an allotment for about 10 years.
I'm
not holding out much hope.
well, we were on the